Hello, everybody. Welcome to the next episode of the Catalyst Story Road series. My name is Philip Gilpin Jr. I'm the CEO and Executive Director here at the Catalyst Story Institute. This is a very exciting panel we have for you tonight. Thanks for joining us on a weekend. In a minute, I'm going to turn it over to our host for the hour. But before I do, I just want to let you know that if you're watching live on Facebook or YouTube, you can use the comment section to ask questions, and we'll try to get to a Q&A later on in the hour. And at this time, I'd like to hand it over to our host, Miss Nikki Cole.
Hey, everyone, and thank you, Phil. Thank you all so much for being here for our Indie Filmmaker panel. This is all about the pursuit of distribution, and we are joined today by the co-creating trio behind the feature film The Thing Before the Thing, which is now streaming on Amazon. In addition to their writing, Katie Locke O'Brien is an actress and director, and she has appeared on shows like Community and Chuck, and as well has directed on episodes of AP Bio and the new Saved by the Bell.
Hello.
Mike Wamser is an actor, director, and fight director, currently on faculty at Malloy College Cap 21, where he teaches movement, physical comedy, stage combat, and devised theater for their BFA musical theater program.
Hey, everybody.
And Mike Piccirillo, director and producer, is also a working crew person on many television and film high-profile projects like Jurassic World and Godzilla vs. Kong.
Hey, everybody.
So, friends, thank you for being here, and congratulations. Because we live in such a time of instant gratification, let's just start with joy. What does it feel like to have your project land on Amazon?
So good.
It's hard to put into words sometimes. Yeah. Katie, why don't you start?
I just, as anyone who has even dipped their toe into indie filmmaking can probably appreciate, it is a long road, and it's a road where the work never ends. It just changes to different tasks. And so to finally be at the finish line, but not only that, but have it be somewhere, on a platform where everybody we know and beyond can easily access it. And, it just feels so great to have it out in the world.
Yeah, that's really the most exciting thing from my point of view is that, the three of us have been to innumerable film festivals together, and to have people be able to see it beyond the 10 people sitting in the theater viewing the festival. It's really nice to be able to have it out there where we can actually share it with the world.
Yeah, and for your friends and family who are not aware of sort of how the industry or the creative process works or whatever, it's one thing to be like, oh, my film got into all these festivals. They're like, okay. And then you're like, it's on Amazon. They're like, oh, it's a real movie.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
So that now we have a real movie, right?
I also, one thing that it didn't occur to me until I had cousins and aunts and uncles and stuff like that watching it is I have family that has never seen me act because they live on the other side of the country, and I've been at it since I was 19 or so, and for the fact that like my aunt or my cousin, this is the first time they've ever actually seen me do anything in that 20 plus years. Like it's pretty incredible.
That's wonderful. Yeah, the family doesn't always get on the plane for like the podunk version of the one-man show or whatever it is that we're doing at the time. So for those who haven't seen it yet, what is the log line for The Thing Before the Thing?
I could take that one. Yeah, it's a group of friends who were in a mentorship program together, have gone off and started living their lives, and they are reuniting to celebrate the retirement of their mentor. And, time has changed. They've all kind of grown up, and we're catching up with them, X number of years later. So now they knew each other when they were in college, and now they're adults, and things have changed. And, a lot of parallels, actually intended parallels when we were making it. But we've also been getting reviews where people have noticed it too, like The Big Chill, which it's an ensemble piece that, a bunch of, relationship and emotional, dramatic stuff, and, just small little character stuff. And yeah, and that's not a log line. That's a terrible log line, but
you'll work on it and bring it back next week, right? So just to set the stage for the origins of this first question is going to be threefold. What was the genesis of the film? When did you start? And what was the original goal?
Well, I think the genesis of the film started, like the seed of it was planted with Pick and I when we were at a film festival. Pick, do you remember what film festival that was? Where it was?
Sham Film Festival.
That was at the Sham Film Festival. Great. Yeah, so we were at the Sham Film Festival doing the festival circuit with our first project together, a mockumentary short called "The Real Truth Behind the Real True Story," and I had been considering a move to LA. Katie had been quite persistent for several years about me moving out there and getting to work with these guys. So Pick and I were driving around, and we were like, well, what are we going to do next? And that's where he and I in the car driving around on our way from venue to venue, we're talking about wanting to do something semi-experimental, improv-based, where we rented a cabin, had a party, and filmed the party. And it started with that conversation. This was the fall of 2014. And actually, that was the weekend that I made the decision to move to LA and get to work with these guys.
I love that. So the original goal was to create what length of project?
There was actually no goal length. I think that's important to say, is that we, because Wanzer and I had also worked together doing ensemble generated improv based theater and had sort of a good working system for that. And initially when we all got together, we really, really committed to the idea that it was about the process and it was about the experiment of it. And so we were like, we'll go in, we'll shoot. If when we come out, we have 3 small webisodes, that's what it is. If we have a short film, that's what it is. And if we have a feature, yeah, right, that's what it is. The problem was that then we like got through our first weekend of shooting and we were like, oh, it's actually kind of good. Maybe we have a feature. And so then it got a little more formalized. But we really tried for as long as possible in the process to just say, like, we're gonna find good stuff. We're gonna create character and follow the story and let it kind of tell us what it's supposed to be.
Mm.
Yeah, and to clarify, just so it's not lost on the timeline, our first weekend of shooting was June, right, guys? It was June. But I arrived in LA in January of 2015, and within weeks of my arrival, the 3 of us got started in the writer's room about hashing out the concept, the circumstances, the characters, the premise, so on and so forth. So so really, like, we got right to work as soon as the 3 of us were in the same city.
Yeah.
And so you were creating an improvised shoot with your friends, your circle, your community of artists, yes, your favorite people. How do you prepare for that? What's the rehearsal process like?
It was fun. I would sort of compare it, I guess the closest thing people might understand for a comp is Curb Your Enthusiasm. But, we sort of went in like, okay, what are the sort of central tenets of a story that we would want to tell? And, what are ideas that we have off the top of our heads for relationships and for kind of like big events in the story? And we, decided who the ensemble might be. And then we sort of had a real rehearsal process where everybody would get together once or twice a week, and we would come in with prompts and scenarios and character ideas. And through the actors, then those things got fleshed out and took on new forms, but it was sort of us then going home in between each of those things and saying, okay, what sparked for us? What could we do without? Let's keep this, let's build on this, and letting it grow and see how far we could kind of get it to build, how much of a world we could create.
What then is the dynamic in that room of everybody creating something together? Because I imagine sometimes in improv, if you've done any improv, people know that someone can get stuck in an idea and kind of hammer away at that because they're really loving their idea, and this other person is really loving their idea. Does that sometimes get in the way, or did it just sort of dovetail because you all know each other?
I think because the way we set it up for the act, we knew for the most part the actors we wanted to be in it, and it was all friends or friends of friends, and we definitely came at them with archetypes of who they would be, but we allowed them to create the persona. I think they all created their own names and kind of their own kind of social identities and things like that, and we worked with them on that. So I think because we allowed them to have a process in the process, like to be able to mold it with us. Nothing really butted heads too much. I feel like, and when we loved something, we're like, oh yeah, do that. And people would usually be able to take that, process that note, and then just kind of build it into what they were doing. So everything kind of, it flowed. Probably my favorite part of the entire process was that few months before we shot, where it was just getting together and doing improv exercises and getting to know each other. And we would talk, we would go sit in a circle and say, tell each other about, stuff about our lives and just get really close. And kind of the evil plan there was it created this great dynamic with these people. Like, you really believe they all knew and loved each other in the film because that's kind of what they were doing in real life. So it was a really great alchemy for that.
That's a great approach.
I would think too, because there was this foundation of friendship and this history between us, because many of these actors were involved in The Real Truth Behind the Real True Story. They were longtime friends of Katie's. So because of that, it was a really egoless room, and everybody really came very eager to contribute their best and work together to, and they were inspired by the idea of the experimentation of it. Even the cinematographer was involved early on about concepts of what the night was going to be like, so he was in many ways part of the ensemble from the beginning. So I think because of the nature of the approach and the history of the people, everybody really just kind of showed up wanting to play their best and play really collaboratively.
And also I think we had a lot of experience already doing creating theater with this approach. But I think probably ultimately the other thing we had going for us is that nobody else that we got involved, I think, had done much like this before. Like, even, some of them were just film actors. Some of them had done some theater, but with scripts in place already, and hadn't done this sort of like improv-based ensemble generated. We're building a bigger thing than just doing one improv scene and then a different improv scene and whatever. And I think that probably played to our advantage ultimately, because everyone was just uncomfortable enough, and it was just new enough to everybody that there was no room to be right about it. You know what I mean? It was just, everybody was like, I don't know, we're going with it. And so it, it created an air of just like, everything's great. It's all just good material.
Mm-hmm. And also some ownership, I think, because, Mike Wamser and I had created something a long time ago, and it didn't have any parameters. And so it was a little more challenging to kind of get everyone on the same page. But I feel like what's so beautiful about the film is that does come through, that everything feels fully lived in. Everything feels like, everybody got to grow into and live into a character fully, which makes them real humans interacting under real circumstances, which I just think makes it a lot better for us to connect to. And that work that you did is evident in that. We all know at home that as storytellers, indie filmmaking can be a very scrappy animal and budgets can be very delicate birds. Talk to us about your budget and how did you make it happen?
Well, we started with, we knew we needed some money. And fortunately, our friends were our friends. So we took advantage of that. And they were all willing to play with us for free or cheap. And we did Indiegogo, to which we set a really low bar, because I think the philosophy was if we are a successful Indiegogo and we get that number kind of early, the momentum will carry us upward. And it did a little bit. We wound up at I think it was like $12,000 at the end of the day. And then over the course of making the film, that money went super quick. And then, probably, we collectively raised about another 18,000. So 30,000 is kind of the number that exists for what the budget was. And for what we did, it's still, to make a feature for 30 grand, anybody who is watching that has done that knows that's not easy. And we called in a lot of favors, and we had a lot of friends, and we shot in a very guerrilla style, and we're very economical about our choices. So
that's one really important part of it, is that all of the homes you see, with the exception of the cabin rental where the actual reunion party takes place, all of the homes you see were our apartments and homes. All of the cars you see were our cars. Yeah. the baby was our friend's baby. Like, it was just like.
You didn't pay the baby, you don't say.
But I mean, it was really, you know, like sort of at our core philosophy, I think, as artists, which is like, look around you. What do you have? You can probably make something with it, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to extend yourself. You know, with, I mean, obviously you have to extend yourself through sweat equity and such hard work. But you've got the resources immediately around you to make your art. So.
And I think by the time we sort of were going into any given shoot weekend as well, like, yes, there was tons of freedom during the rehearsal process, but by the time we were going into a shoot weekend, there was no like, and then we're just going to see what scenes feel right. Like, it wasn't that, you know. So by that point, the three of us had then taken all the material, written it, structured it. And so the dialogue in the moment was often improvised, but that's why I say that thing about Curb, is because it was like, okay, we're going and we're shooting the scene where, you know, Mara confronts her sister about it, you know, like, so it was very, very specific at that point. So we were, you know, we were like, if you don't have money, you have to have time and make it good. Here we go. Like, this is what we're going to do, you know? And so that was like, you know, we were incredibly specific about how we shot. So it wasn't just like,
Totally.
Otherwise, it could have gone to forever. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the part where you know, the part where we were really flexible was through the rehearsal process, and that we did a lot of exploration. But that, I think, to your earlier question, Nikki, I think that that is the rare thing that we were able to have with this that so many cinema projects don't have, which is an extended rehearsal process, which lays the foundation for those characters and those relationships. And so we could get really specific and bang out the scenes where they're, okay, we need to do it again, but we need you to say this and not that. Go, right? Like, and we were able to work quickly once we got on set because we'd taken all that time laying a really solid scaffolding.
And to have that sort of three-headed monster shared shorthand, I think works, because if you don't catch it, someone else is catching. What's the story beat that we missed? You're all taking care of it together.
Mm-hmm.
Just for a moment, tell me, how many production days did you have for the first round? And then when you realized you had a feature, how many more days did you add?
I believe the first shoot was 5 days. I believe it was 4 or 5 days. And we went up to, we Airbnb'd a cabin, the cabin that's in the film. Told the guy what we were doing. He said, "Is it porn?" I said, "No." He said, "Okay." And then, you know, we're called the thing before the thing. The guy has a right to ask that question.
He's like, "What's the thing?"
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
It's all good. It's all good. It's all on the so we did that, and then we cut together, and we're like, "Hey, we have 43 minutes. Okay, so that's not quite a feature, but it's definitely not a short. Let's go for the feature." And then we did another, I believe, 3-day shoot in Arrowhead. We went back to the cabin. We rented the cabin again, and everybody who could come back came back with us. And we did another 3 days. We did another 4 days in in and around Los Angeles, including where Harris's offices were. Because Harris actually originally wasn't even going to be in the film. And then we're like, everybody talks about this guy that you never see. We kind of have to put him in the movie. So we actually wrote him in to the movie to make, you know, to have something for the audience to have a relationship with. And ultimately we got Kim Estes, who was, you know, the greatest. So yeah, I think it wound up like 11 or 12 days total.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so you take all that and you're assembling it together. You've edited it together. Post, we fixed everything in post, of course, as we always easily do. We have a feature. Did you get to premiere it?
We did. We had a screening in Los Angeles. We had a screening in Los Angeles, which was kind of our casting crew, which was an awesome screening. And it was a really big theater, and everybody came out, and it was a blast to see it on the screen. And then we also did a New York premiere at the Archives, right? Anthology Theater.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we had a couple of screenings, and then we played at a couple festivals over the course. Actually, we had a festival right before quarantine hit in February in Hollywood. So we got to have the theater the screening experience. But ultimately, you know, we're like, okay, we did that, good, that's done. You know, the festival thing is great, but you know, it was like we can go and get our little laurels and our, you know, things, or we can try to make something happen with it. And we elected for the latter. So.
Of course. Well, let's dive into that.
Yeah.
So for you, the pursuit of distribution did not flow from being at any particular festival.
No.
What were the steps involved in starting to take meetings and making that deal with Amazon?
Well, it actually happened really kind of easily for us, I think. Well, Katie actually had a lot to do with it because she put me in touch with First Focus International. She had a relationship with Mark Shady and Laith over there, and they saw the movie, and it was funny because he's like, tell me about the movie before I see it. And I told him, it's this improv thing about people who are in those relationships. And he admittedly, he's like, when you told me what the movie was about, I was like rolling my eyes because it just sounded like so like vainglorious, like actor, glam project. And he's like, but I watched it. And then he called me right away and told me he loved it and he wanted to, represent it. And he was literally, that was it. We were off to the races. It was our first like kind of, olive branch for somebody, and they took it. And then he found Indie Rights, and Indie Rights kind of got on board, and Indie Rights actually shepherded it to Amazon, to which, and I'll say it right now for the first time, is that we were a rental purchase situation, but now we are free on Prime Video, which is awesome. And we premiered on Tubi, which is another like Hulu-esque streaming channel. So you can find us there. Both places, those are both free venues to watch the film. So that is great because you get way more, it's hard to sell our movie with people that aren't immediately familiar to the public, to pay money for. But when it's free, you're going to have people go, oh, this is good, I'll check this out. So it's very exciting. So that just happened this week. So.
Can you speak a little more in depth to the rental versus the free dynamics? What does that mean for you as filmmakers? What are you getting out of that situation? And what are the terms?
Well, and it is a little new to me, but my understanding is because the first month we were on Amazon as a paid program, we had to hit a certain benchmark of views and reviews. And we did a lot, and actually Mike was a champion of social networking for that and making that happen. He got the word out. He became a promotions beast and just
it was amazing.
Very impressive.
And just was like tweet, Facebook, Instagram. But got it out there, and then they wanted us to hit 50 to 100 reviews, and we landed right in the middle at like 75. So as we hit our 30 days on Amazon, that's when it switched over to Prime Video. So I guess that's a threshold you have to get to. And then Prime Video, then you're in that. It's all based on viewership at that point. And I'm not retiring, but it's it's going to kind of take off on its own, and not having to worry about people paying for it. I think it makes it a lot more likely to be seen because people are a lot more willing to take those. Oh, I don't know anything about this. Let me check this movie out. Let me see what's going on. So,
yeah, especially if it's already included in the Prime membership you have versus dropping,
right.
$2 or $3 for the rental. Especially now when a lot of people are counting every penny they've got, and they're only going to watch the stuff that they already pay for. They're not going to take even a $3 financial risk, But so I think it becomes really helpful when there's not that extra factor of what's going to cost me into whether or not I want to spend the time.
And that early push that we did for reviews and stuff also just affects, the recommendation engine. And so it's more likely to come up as an option for people who are further flung from us, than it would otherwise. You don't sort of have to go hunt for it quite as much. The other thing I wanted to say, just to Mike Piccirillo's point about how those first relationships got made, is that this project, as many, many things, almost all things I think that have come to fruition for me throughout all the years I've been working, it wasn't that I even knew I already had a relationship with a distribution company or anything. One of the guys who works there and I were in acting class together a long time ago for a bunch of years. He's wonderful. I didn't even really put together this with any sort of intention, but we made a trailer. and we shared it on all our social media, like way back when the film was first finished, and like we were just going to have screenings and everything. And that's actually how they saw the trailer and approached, got in touch with me, and they were like, oh, this is what we're doing, and can we see the whole movie and whatever. And I think that is just important to say, because I feel like time and time again, I think, how's this ever going to pay off? Or did I just keep putting my work out there, and who knows if it ever comes to light? And always it's like a person you don't expect from a thing that you didn't see coming, that's sort of sideways. But like all the things you make, everything you put out there always pays off somehow.
Mm-hmm. I think that's so important too, in terms of the Indiegogo side of things, as well as the please review, give us a hand, check in, watch this, especially if they're being asked to pay for it, at the initial stage. It's so important, I've found, to write specific emails. You can have your form letter, but like, hey, hello, how's the kids? We would love it if you could, because I don't find a lot on Facebook of help just from putting it on your wall. Some people will see it there, but really putting it in an inbox directly and specifically to someone on purpose is a little bit more of a personal check-in. And I think you guys had to have done a lot of work to get 75 reviews. You have to ask many, many circles to actually sit down and watch over an hour film.
Well, I'd like to address that specifically, because to Pic's point earlier, that's basically what I did for the first 3 weeks of us being on Amazon. You're absolutely right, Nikki. Like just posting it becomes noise in the social media cacophony. But like, because of the nature of the film and because of the nature of the work that we do, I was able to reach out individually to the members of my long form improv group that I had for 2 years when I first moved to New York City, and said, hey guys, remember the long form that we used to use? Well, check this out. We made this with it. And I reached out to my mentors and said, thank you for your mentorship and your guidance when I was a young artist. I made this and I'd like to share it with you. And I couldn't have done it without your help when I was young and stupid, right? And like to be able to like reach out to those, my grad school class where we were trained in that long form improv, my undergrad class that we all shared that time together, and reaching out individually and saying, hey, everybody, I'm really excited. It would be really helpful if you could check this out and rate it. And just like every individual person along the way who mentored me and touched me and inspired me, I took it upon myself as an opportunity to say thank you. And they were very supportive still, as they were when I started, So you're absolutely right, like that direct appeal.
I think in this business, it's important to remind ourselves that energy is a boomerang. And so if you are being asked to help somebody out, know that may come back around for you to have your stuff reviewed when you have an opportunity to be on Amazon. So just always, always, always try to fit that stuff in. Can we just circle back for a moment to the specifics of when you were on the original rental base situation? What is that? Is that a certain number of views get you a certain number of cents? And how many people are you having to share that with? Is that something you can share with us?
Well, it's not all very made clear. Hey, you're on Amazon. But my understanding is there's a certain you get a certain amount of money for a certain amount of time your thing is viewed. If you hit it to the end, you get more than you get if someone only watches a half hour of it. And then in the situation where what we're in is, because we have first focus and indie rights, so when the time comes, they each get a little piece of the pie, and then we get the rest of it. And then we divide that up, to pay off the debt the film has accrued mostly at this point. But it's not a lot. Because the other thing too is Amazon is kind of like, well, you could do it here or not. And we have 9 gazillion things to watch.
Amazon doesn't need us,
Yeah.
but they're doing fine.
Yeah, versus pennies, right? Where you're like, okay, but this cachet of Amazon lets me make a better deal the next time as well, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I think being free on Prime is more lucrative in my understanding, but it hasn't been, spelled out specifically to us, because it's also, we're just getting on there and getting started. And, you know, and also, frankly, to be honest, I could have been more dogged about finding out, but I was just so grateful to have it available for people to see that I'm like, yeah, because frankly, when we made this and it was a cohesive and made sense movie, that was it. I'm like, we did it. Like, done. You know, everything else is gravy. So I wasn't necessarily super hyper focused on the commerce end of things, because none of us did this with the intent of it being like, you know, a moneymaker situation. It was something cool we did with our friends that just happened to be like super rewarding and fun, and made sense in the edit.
And it's a little quiet, character-driven dramedy. You know, it's not like it's a rom-com, it's a horror, it's something that is like super commercial. And I think in all of those situations, you have to sort of say like, but having a film that is done and out there, yeah, like gets you more funding for the next thing, gets you more eyeballs for the next thing, and like these are, you know, often these are a pay-it-forward situation.
And as a result of this, you know, as a result of this group and a few others in a slightly larger circle, this group has gone on to start to continually create together, continually support each other in their creative efforts. You know, but collectively between the people in front of the camera and behind the camera, and those few others in a slightly larger circle, we've made a good 20 to 30 more short films that have gotten into more festivals, and just established like a real sort of generative working collective of artists supporting artists, and everybody working to get there out. You know, the rising tide raises all ships. Like we all just continue to support each other in our efforts to be creative and to self-generate.
Is Tubi a similar on-demand situation, or rather, is it a kickback to the artists, like, you know, small tip jar situation?
My understanding with Tubi is because it is advertising driven, it's commercial based. So you get to watch everything for free, but there's, you know, 3 or 4 commercial breaks. Like if you're like it's the equivalent of Hulu if you're not getting Hulu Plus.
Understood. Okay.
I think you get a taste of the, you know, because it's driven by the advertising dollars that the you know, the commercials are pouring into the thing. So it's, you know, they kind of divvy it up by, okay, they watch this amount of time, here you go. So it's similar in that, you know, whereas the money for the Amazon stuff is driven primarily from the memberships of the Prime Video, Tubi is driven by the ad commerce.
And now that you've done the initial push to sort of clear that bar and be on the free stream, do you still have a responsibility to drive traffic at the same level? Is that still being asked of you, or does it now sort of take on its own?
Right. No, it's a good question. And the answer is simple. It's you, as successful as you want it to be is on you. That is why a couple weeks ago you saw us start to premiere a couple of commercials and something targeted. We started using the Facebook ad thing to kind of just drive traffic. So you know, Amazon isn't going to go, hey, we'll cut a commercial for you. You know, they're not gonna, the best thing for you is they'll be like recommended for you. That's what they do for you. But as far as you know, if you want eyeballs on it, it's on you to help with that. And like Wamser said, you can't just, you know, flop it up onto your social page, because there's so much noise and it just gets lost in there. But if you're doing targeted commercials, that helps, and that's what we've been doing. So you will continue to be an advocate for it, for people to see it.
Well, and as we all know, with anything that we do, the single best thing to drive viewers or ticket sales is word of mouth. And so getting people talking about it, recognize, you know, like friends of mine who have seen it and now are telling their coworkers to check it out and so on. And like that's the phenomenon you want to create. So
yeah, when it's your friends, when your friends are excited with the thing that you've done, and then they get to turn around and go, my friend made a movie, you should watch it. I mean, it's the attachment of, I'm associated with the thing before the thing. I'm the thing before the thing before the thing.
I'm the thing adjacent to the thing before the thing. Yeah.
Indeed. I'm in the circle. So let's jump to some questions from our audience. I don't know if I already know someone at a distribution company. How do I get a meeting? or I don't already know someone at a distribution company, how do I get a meeting?
I mean, that's one of those things that always, like, it just depends, and everyone's path tends to be different. My advice on that is always, when you have something like that, like, I think the most important thing for artists trying to get their work out there is getting over that hurdle where you believe that it's like annoying to bug people about things. Like, people will want to help you, and people are happy to help you if they can. And so, like, in that situation, if I hadn't posted it and he contacted me, I would have ended up getting to them the same way, because I would have said, okay, so here, circle of friends, does anybody know anybody at a distribution company? Like, how can I just, like, would anybody willing to share this? How do I get this in front of somebody? I, like, told my first series that way, like, this is how we got this one. I think it's the hardest part is getting comfortable with asking, but then every time I'm always surprised by how much people want to be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, yeah, I feel like in general, like everything we've made together, everything we've made individually, like if there's always an ongoing conversation of who do we know who, right? Like between us here in this room, who do we know who has access to this thing, who can help us find somebody who knows this thing, who can help us, with answers to this question, and just continually, taking stock of resources and friends and allies and colleagues, and just a constant, reinvestigation of that.
Mm-hmm.
And friends, because people you've worked with and your friends, if they can't help you, they might be like, oh, but you know what? Somebody in my acting class, like, got a feature that was, maybe I can ask them for you, so it always ends up getting further afield than you even could have on your own. But
right, it's diligence at that point. There's got to be, if you think about the math of the number of people somewhere in that circle is someone whose sister is doing it, someone whose cousin is in something, and it's honestly just about switching hats, I think. Katie, we talked about this. You mentioned that you had a script that you had written originally. This was The Hub, I think, where you said we were specifically sending it to people going, do we know anybody who wants to show this to someone they know? And it's really about switching your hat from being like an actor or creator asking for help and being a producer who has a responsibility to the piece that you created to get it out there. And it puts you sort of in a different place of ownership and permission to reach out and tap people on the shoulder.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think there's confidence and faith with that too. Like trusting yourself, trusting your work, trusting that that your work deserves that question,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have to be your own advocate. You have to, you basically have to own the producer. That's the best. That's the one thing I definitely learned is you have to, because no one is gonna just hand it to you. And
of course.
Persistence, and it's cliched and obvious, but it does still have some value.
I think you also probably have to be a bit of, because I'm thinking of it now, like, how would I do that? You have to be a bit of a super stalker in a good way. Like, go and look, are there listings? What are the top 10 indie filmmaker distribution houses, and what do they represent, and who's representing things that are like what you do? And then maybe cross-check that with Facebook and see if you have mutual friends in common, or LinkedIn.
Yeah. That is my number one greatest tool in my whole life. Every meeting I ever have, everyone I'm ever trying to get in touch with, I'm like, oh, let me immediately see who I can find that's like friends of friends, 2 people removed, on Facebook, on Instagram, anything that I can do to figure out some connection is invaluable. Absolutely.
Yeah, and the more you talk about it too, I've had things where in a random situation, having a conversation with someone's friend at a bar, just talking about what you're doing, they go, oh, I would send that to my sister. Do you want to send it to me? Like, people are forthcoming if they have it to offer you. Let's take another question. What is the distribution meeting like? What happens in it? What do they ask you? Are there specific things that you should have prepared?
I can say from experience, especially when we got in with indie rights, I can speak on that. They're very organized, and they basically send you a packet, and they say, here's all the things you need to do. And those things include, making sure your film is properly mastered, and is 2-channel stereo and is in the proper format and the proper type of file. Having all of your promotional items in order, so that's having promotional stills from the film. So like when you go to Amazon and you look at a splash page, usually there's a photo or two, and then there's maybe a movie poster. Having all of those digital assets named and organized, and that's like, I think it especially in the electronic streaming distribution talk of things, that's I think vital from the get-go. I think before you even start, it's a really great practice to really be anal retentive with your digital assets, and having your multiple sizes of posters, and having a Photoshop file with layers of your poster, and having sizes so you can do like the little tiny icon, but also can do a full screen. It's like there's no shortage of that. Having captions done, that's a big one. And having like all of your music track lists, and your credits list, and it's organization. And that kind of bit us a little on the back end, because fortunately, because we were all in quarantine, I had plenty of free time to deal with it. I had to go back a couple of years in some cases and re-pull all that stuff together and organize. And it forced me, I'm just like, you know what, in case I need this any other time, I'm just going to do this for real. And we just put it together and just have hard drives ready to go. And I also have a version of it available on Dropbox. People can just go get it, pull it down, take it, whatever. And also we got a theatrical screening format version of the film made. You can find companies that'll do that. I think it's called a DCP. And that allows for your film. You don't want to just give them like an MOV file and go, hey, here's a QuickTime movie, put it on a movie screen, because it looks like garbage. So that's another thing to have. And basically, it's all about having the hard drives and having it locked up and having multiple copies of everything and making it accessible. And plug and play. I think that if I were a distributor, that is exactly what I would want.
And I think it's really important, having done a lot of the marketing side of those things in terms of your pictures and what's going into Photoshop, the DPI, the requirements, like really researching as you go and making sure you have a 300 DPI version and a 500 and a 700, because those things are definitely needed. And if they're not, the graphics can get kind of grainy, especially with Facebook. Facebook has its own parameters. Instagram, every platform has something different. And so if you don't have those things at the ready, suddenly your stuff is starting to look unprofessional. And as for the DCP, if people don't know about the editing side of that, the DCP is the projected light version, the movie version, right? That's going to be put onto something, as opposed to how we see it on our screens. So a lot of people end up having a whole different color master for that version of what they do. I'm like, no, he was like, yes. But I also can't imagine you all having had to caption improvised dialogue. It's not like you can just open that script and be like, oh yes, and then I'll just put this right in. No.
None of that. And it's fortunate. There's a company that I got, and I'm not getting a kickback or anything, but rev.com, you can send them your film, and they have, it's either the software or someone's doing it. They send you back the file with the captions, and they have a web-based editor where you go through the whole movie and you can change, you can fix, you can add. Like for me, I added a lot of like sound effect things, like door opens, things like that I felt like I wanted for thinking of people who have, issues with hearing, and they rely on closed captioning, making that a better experience for them. I think that's also a good thing to point out, is thinking about that audience, especially with streaming. But rev.com kind of sets it up for you, and you don't really have to know how to do it. You need to know, you basically have to replay the line about 10 times and type it to make it match in some cases. But yeah, it's come a long way. It's a lot easier than it used to be.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. I think we've got a few more questions too. What would be next? Can you share more about the details of a distribution deal? What items did you have to have and negotiate for?
Well, we didn't really have to negotiate much. It was kind of like the distributor was like, here's what we're offering. They get a percentage. Whatever, for example, Amazon, whatever Amazon gives us, they're automatically entitled to a percentage. I believe it's 20%. And they receive all the monies from Amazon. They take care of it. They give you the receipts and show you everything, and then they send me my portion of the pie for me to split up on my end. So however I have established with my casting crew what I'm going to do, that's on me to deal with. So it wasn't that, and I think this is the case. Negotiation is, I think, more so for people who are doing stuff where you're negotiating with studios and things like that. This is they kind of like, here's what we're offering you. Would you like it? And it's like yes or no. And with indie rights, it's basically that. And First Focus, and we have a relationship with them where a percentage has been determined. So when the movie when it's time to figure out payment, some goes to indie rights, some goes to First Focus, some goes to us.
Mm-hmm.
How it goes. And the more people involved, obviously, that's you thin out the percentages.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I'm blanking on the name of the other place right now, but there was one other company that was an option, and we did sort of go back and forth, and there were things that tripped us up in that deal. So I think while they're relatively standard, we found the things to be glaring that we saw as problematic in terms of either IP or length of time that they had to get it up somewhere, or percentage or whatever it was. I don't remember exactly.
I don't either,
that other one, but.
And also, I believe the thing that was the big turnoff for us was they were like, you could pay them a certain amount.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm like, no.
Oh, that's what it was. It was sort of like, their offer was distribution, but then they baked in a sort of part of it where upfront you paid them to do a bunch of PR on behalf of your film. And so it was like, sort of seemed like a benefit, but also we were like, I don't know, that feels like something we could do ourselves, and we don't want to commit to just giving that away, or like having to front even more money. Like we're seeking distribution because now it's time to like let it be out in the world, and over time, hopefully it pays us back for just what we spent on the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to that end, like there wasn't a ton of negotiating in that each of these companies has their thing. This is how they kind of do it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was relatively easy for us to see, at least for ourselves in our situation, which one felt like these guys are going to take care of it, and which ones felt like this is a little rackety.
And we went with people who genuinely believed in our film. Like it wasn't just another box to tick. It was something where we had advocates. We knew we had advocates who believed in what we did and wanted to put it out there. So.
Mm-hmm. And as Pick mentioned before, it is a wonderfully vague world. It's not something that is plastered. I know at one point I was doing a search, and I think there was one particular site that said something like, okay, 100,000 views would get you about $300. That might be Vimeo or something. So we're talking about modest amounts for these pays, because if it's $2.99 per rental, then we're splitting fractions of fractions.
But to make it sound in the contract, it's like, and then you guys get your 0.001006% of the thing. And we're like, whatever. Fine.
You have to divide 3 ways. So
yeah, it's a very different world than, say, Amazon coming to you for the next thing you do and saying, we've got a budget. Then you're in a position to be negotiating differently to say, we would love to have X, Y, and Z, and this is how we'd love to do it. But from this point of view, just as a reminder for everybody, they've made this with their own money, and are now coming to Amazon saying, want this? And how can what's the balance? So they're modest amounts that we're talking about. Let's take another question. When you put your show on an ad-driven platform, do you get to set the commercial breaks, or does the platform do it randomly?
You have zero input. Like this would be applied to Tubi, I guess would be the easiest current example we have. Tubi's like, we got it, we'll take care of it. And they put whatever they see fit. And they have a standard. They don't, it's not like 6 minutes of commercials. It's 30 to 60 seconds. And that applies to, they have also, Tubi makes deals with, just like Hulu and other streaming companies. They have like, movies that were released in the studio system 10, 15 years ago that are just kind of like, Drill Bit Taylor or Happy Gilmore or something that no one's really actively buying a lot of, but it's they get a bunch of titles from each studio and they're just kind of there, and they all have the same amount of commercials.
I was just going to say also, the other version of this question is, we also did not get to decide where the commercials fall.
No, not at all.
You know what I mean? Like that, users sort of like they do it, and you hope that they think about your story. They probably don't.
Well, I was going to ask, is it part of your pitch that you have to say, this is what we believe our demographic is, or is that something that they decide based on their audience?
That's that. I mean, they're going to make it to the best, to what serves their platform best. They're obviously going to do that,
Mhm.
and that's, you know, you're at their mercy. But I feel like I'm like, well, they're probably going to make the same choice I made.
Right.
You know?
They just don't need your help to do it. They can figure it out.
Because you think about just how many things are on these services. That there's not enough human beings to deal with all of that.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah. So.
I think we've got one more question.
Yes.
Am I required to have an agent to get distribution?
Nope. I don't got one. I would love one.
Yeah, that's important to say. We are a mix of WGA and non-WGA. We're a mix of having representation and not. That stuff doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Like your movie.
You too can pursue distribution. What would you say, we didn't cover this, but what would you say were the most important things you spent your money on?
Food. Food.
Well,
Seriously. That's my number one rule of indie filmmaking, food, because everyone is giving you lots of time and lots of effort and all of their talent, and upfront you're not able to pay them anywhere near what they deserve, and that is the best way to keep everybody happy. But feel free to have better answers, you guys.
No, you're absolutely right. Like, on set and in process, absolutely. Like take care of your people as well as you can, knowing that you can't pay them, right? Like, and so we really tried to respect everyone's time. We didn't waste anyone's time, and certainly we went out of our way. Both in ordering crafty, and also, you know, where a few of us are very good cooks. So crafty was a hat that I wore at the cabin, for example. I made a great chili. Katie gave me the recipe. But I would say that the other place that our money went that I think is super important is we really spent our money on everything that was going to make the film look and sound good. Right, like that's where our resources went to make sure that to make sure that the final product looked good, you know, and it's to be able to take something that you spent $30,000 on and make it look like you spent $100,000 or $200,000 on, because the color is excellent and the camera work is excellent and the editing is excellent.
Sound is so big. Sound is always like the dead giveaway of low budget. Yeah.
Huge. We've got just about 2 minutes left. Just to wrap up and button it, what was each of your favorite experience or favorite takeaway from filming this together?
I would say filming this together was probably my favorite takeaway, especially when we were at the cabin, because it was literally us all going up to a cabin, and the cabin was also crew housing. So we all just went up, and like it was like going on a vacation that we filmed. And we just hung out with all the people that we love, and it was just really just a wonderful kind of kumbaya experience, and making it, like I said before, just getting it done was the reward, and everything else is gravy. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, and no, go ahead, Katie.
Go ahead. I was going to say that I for sure the friendship aspect and the bonding that took place during the shoot was unbelievable. I also feel like that very first LA screening was just like is etched in my memory and unlike any screening experience I've ever had, because not only for ourselves were we like, this came together and it's cohesive and it's a big story and it works, and like that was already so exciting, but we forgot until we arrived that actually no one, because there was no script in the traditional sense, none of the cast members had any idea what had happened in any scene that they were not in. And so to see all of them experience for the first time what might have as an actor felt sort of a piece here and a piece there and somewhat disjointed or whatever, and then to have all of them like so moved by the end of it was like, oh, okay, this is like weirdly our cast has fresh eyes on this, and it was just really fun to see.
Yeah, and I just add to that, Katie, you said friendship. I just Katie and I have been close for a very long time. I met Pic through Katie because they had known each other from a previous project, and just with every iteration, every step, every moment along the way, just the continued deepening and strengthening of the ties of friendship, not only between us, but also between the cast and the crew and everyone who was any part of it. Like, it's been probably the most rewarding part for me is this this sort of weird life imitating art thing, where this family from this event in my past that now we will all carry with us, and we can have our own reunion in a cabin in 12 years. And
yes, beautiful.
know,
Film it, because that'll be the sequel, right?
Yeah.
So you all know what's next. That is our final thing. We're just at the end, but do you know what will be next? Is it cooking in the pot?
For me, I have a short film that's kind of in process right now. It's written. Hoping to show it. We're basically not thinking of anything until after quarantine is figured out. But I'm also working on a documentary with a friend of mine. That's coming together, and hopefully something else as well.
Great.
I've got a new play, a new devised play in the hopper that is currently in development, and similar process back to devised theater, but an interview-based devised play that I'm seeking to get produced within the next year.
Excellent. Katie?
In quarantine, I've written the first third of many things. Finished none of them, but those will all continue. And I do have a couple of directing projects lined up for, hopefully, knock on wood, mid to late 2021, depending on the world. We'll see, but yeah.
I would like to say that although it's too early to say anything about what it might be, the three of us have started to look at what our next thing is going to be. So there will be a thing after the thing before too long.
Thank you all for being here. We can't wait to see what you guys do next. And we'll see you out there on Amazon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.